Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri. Rabbi zidni ilma. In the name of Allah, my Lord, open up for me my chest and ease my task for me. My Lord, increase me in knowledge. Now, this is part 3 of those 3 videos I've made, Understanding the Qur'an from Within, part 3. Okay, in part 1, I spoke about revelation, wahi, and I spoke about guidance. In part 2, I spoke about those verses which make mention of Allah and His Messenger, and I showed I've proved without a doubt that this is not referring to 2 separate obediences, brothers, but it's one and the same obedience. Now, in part 3, I'm going to reiterate the importance of these 2 topics here, Hadith and Sunnah. Now, brothers, I've already made videos on this. For example, I've made a video called Hadith of Who, and I've also made a video called Sunnah of Who. I urge you to please refer to those videos to get a much more in-depth explanation to those. Now, here I'm just pretty much doing a summary of these 5 important topics. Now, the reason why I'm doing these videos, brothers, is because I can't stress enough how important these 5 topics are. The topic of wahi, the topic of guidance, those verses that make mention of Allah's Messenger, the subject of Hadith and Sunnah. Like, these are so important that we fully grasp and understand what these topics are talking about from within the Qur'an itself. Again, when I say understand the Qur'an from within, I don't mean from our personal whims and desires, nor do I mean from the scholarly opinions of the scholars. I'm talking about from within the Qur'an. Now, for example, like within the Qur'an itself, if I was to look for something to do with marriage and divorce, for example, wouldn't you say it's logical that I'd look for verses relating to marriage and I'll look for verses relating to divorce? Wouldn't I do that? For example, there's a chapter called Talaq, divorce. Wouldn't I look for that chapter, look for all those verses related to those topics? Same thing goes here with Hadith and Sunnah. Now, this is well known among traditional Islam. This is well known. Whenever you use the word Hadith, this is automatically synonymous with the sayings, the recorded sayings of Prophet Muhammad in these so-called Sahih collections. This is how it's understood in the Muslim world. And the word Sunnah is synonymous with the actions and the deeds of Prophet Muhammad. But the question is, how does the Qur'an make use of these terms, brothers? This is like every other subject. How does the Qur'an make use of these? This is so important. Subhanallah. Now, let's get started. Hopefully this video won't be as long as the other ones, and I do apologize, my brothers. I know my videos tend to drag a lot. Now, the word hadith, linguistically, hadith means a story, a narrative, a speech or a word. It could also mean a conversation, etc. It means like a conversation or a speech or a narrative. Okay, linguistically in Arabic, this is what it means. Okay, now I'll give you some verses here. There's a verse here, chapter 4, verse 140, which says, and it has already come down to you in the book that when you hear the verses of Allah recited, they are denied by them and ridiculed. So do not sit with them until they enter into another hadithin. The word hadith is here. Now this, from the context, you could tell that the word hadith linguistically simply means a conversation, like storytelling or conversation, right? Indeed, you would be just like them. Indeed, Allah will gather the hypocrites and the disbelievers in hell altogether. So simply, it's here. It's saying when they start mocking the verses of Allah, go leave their presence until they change the topic, they change the conversation. Okay. Now here's another verse. Chapter 20, verse 9. In Arabic, it reads, Hal ataka hadith, hadith Musa. Has a story, the hadith of Musa alayhi reached you? Now Allah Azza wa Jal is asking a linguistic, he's asking a rhetorical question here. Allah is simply saying to the people at that time, at the time of Muhammad alayhi have you heard the story relating to Moses alayhi? Now think about this. At that time, there were Jews, there were Christians, and there were mushrikeen. They would have heard something about Moses alayhi, especially from the Jews and especially from the Christians. They surely would have heard something. Think about it. Now, if your neighbors, if you're living somewhere and your neighbors, they just all happen to be Christian, surely you'd hear something about Jesus, wouldn't you? Like, it'll come up in a conversation. Like, you'll hear something about it. Now, Allah's asking the rhetorical question. Has the story of Moses reached you? But here's the thing though, is Allah just simply saying, is he saying, whatever hadith of Moses, story you heard about Moses, you should go pursue and follow that? Is that what the Qur'an is saying? Or has the Qur'an come down to clarify this information? Think about that, brothers. Okay? Let that sink in. Let's go to another verse. Now, this is an interesting one. Verse 31, verse 6. And of the people is he who buys the amusement of speech. Lahwal hadith. The word hadith appears there. To mislead others from the path of Allah without knowledge. And who takes it in ridicule. Those will have a humiliating punishment. Now, this is interesting. Here it says, there will be those people who uphold or purchase the amusement of speech. The word lahwa is interesting in Arabic. Lahwa means something that diverts you, or something that is baseless or entertaining, or a sport or amusement. Right? Now here it's saying they will uphold lahwa al-hadith. Okay? To mislead you from the path of Allah. Now what's interesting, if you go to the next verse, it says, and I'll go through this in that video, which I'll go into a lot more detail in that video called Hadith of Who. I highly recommend you watch that. The next verse says, it says something like, and when you recite verses of Allah, ayatullah, the verses of Allah to them, it's like they turn away as if there's this deafness in their ears. Like when you're reciting the verses of Allah, they uphold lahwa al-hadith. Now think about this, brothers. How many times, and this happened to me recently this happened to me. I was having a discussion with this individual and I told him, brother, the Quran says this, the Quran says that. He just kept going on and on about the hadith of this person. The hadith says this, the hadith says that. Like, brother, I'm reciting the verses to you. And he very arrogantly was just talking over me. So, but the hadith says this and the hadith says that. I'm talking about the hadiths in Bukhari and Abu Dawud and Tirmidhi and things like this. Subhanallah, brothers, what the Quran says. They will uphold lahwa al-hadith, diverting hadith to try to take you away from the Quran. Subhanallah, this is all too common. Let's go to another verse here, another example of the word hadith. Chapter 33, verse 53. Now look at this, brothers. Really pay attention. O you have believed, do not enter the houses of the Prophet, except when you are permitted for a meal without awaiting his readiness. But when you are invited, then enter. And when you have eaten, disperse without seeking to remain for lihadithin. See, the word hadith is here. Indeed, that behavior was troubling the Prophet. Have a think about it. Let this sink in for a moment. It's talking about, obviously, the people at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet invited them to a meal, to his house. It's saying, when you come to his house, knock on the door. Wait for permission before you enter. And when you've entered, eat. And when you finish your meal, don't stick around too long. It says here, don't stick around for a hadith. In other words, don't stick around for storytelling or conversation or chit chat. Don't stick around for this, because this would trouble the Prophet. He didn't like this. Now think about this, brothers and sisters. This is a very simple question I have. If we are saying the hadiths of Prophet Muhammad, those that are recorded in the Sahih collections, if they are so important and binding upon the believers, or binding upon us, then why would Allah say this, brothers? Why would he say this? Here clearly it's saying, don't stick around for a hadith at his home. If the hadiths were important, the Prophet would love to tell his hadiths to the people. But it says, don't stick around for it, because he didn't like this. You can read the rest of the verse yourself, brothers, in your own time. That's what the Quran says. This is quite contrary to what the sheikhs and the mullahs are telling us. Oh, the hadiths are so important. But he says, don't stick around for a hadith at his home. Subhanallah, think about that, bro. Let that sink in. Here's another verse, chapter 51, verse 24. Has there reached the story, hadith, of the honored guests of Ibrahim? Now here Allah is reiterating the importance of this situation. Now Allah says, have you heard this? Now the people, they may have heard this story from Jews and Christians, from the hadiths that was circulating at that time. But the question is Allah saying, whatever these hadiths you heard about the guests of Ibrahim, go and pursue and follow them? Is that what the Quran is saying? Think about this. Or has the Quran come to clarify all this information? Think about it. Here's another verse. Chapter 66, verse 3. Here's another interesting one. And remember when the Prophet confided or told in secret to one of his wives a statement. See, it says hadithan. The word hadith again. Now think for a moment. Let's pause it for a second. The Prophet told one of his wives a hadith in secret. Think about this, brothers. If the hadiths of Prophet Muhammad are so important and binding upon us. Why would he say a hadith in secret? Think about this. It's something very, very important for us, for our salvation. Should remain a secret. Think about this. He told one of his wives a hadith in secret, and when she informed another of her, so that wife went and told another wife of the Prophet, which she was supposed to keep secret. And Allah showed it to him. He made known a part of it and ignored the part. And when he informed her about it, she said, who told you of this? He said, I was informed by the known and the acquainted. So this situation happened where the Prophet told his wife a hadith, one of the statements, the sayings of the Prophet. But why would this be a secret if it's so important for us? Think about it. She went and told another, and then Allah informed the Prophet of this, saying your wives were doing this. Now, what's interesting, and I'll cover that in that video, I urge you to watch the video to get a more in-depth understanding of those verses. Now, the next verse, chapter 4 reads, and if you two repent, it's better because your hearts have deviated. SubhanAllah, think about this. Your hearts have deviated. So, what was the crime of the wives? They simply took this information, this hadith of the Prophet, which we say is so important and binding upon us, and she went and shared this with another. And they get told off, and in fact, Allah says that you have deviated. Brother, let this sink in for a moment. Just like the verse before saying, do not stick around at the Prophet's home for a hadith because this troubled him. Well, if they're so important and binding upon us, then why would the Qur'an say this, brothers and sisters? Now, back in the day when I first was reading the Qur'an, I was shocked with what the Muslims are telling me, what the Qur'an is saying. These are two different things. SubhanAllah. Yeah, here, look, the verse continues. If you two wives repent to Allah, it is best, for your hearts have deviated. Think about that. What was their crime? Sharing a hadith of the Prophet? Well, aren't the hadiths of Prophet Muhammad so important and binding upon us? Then why would the Quran say this? Brothers, I'm not saying to you, go and reject all the hadiths out there. I'm not saying that. But brothers, read what the Quran, let it sink in what the Quran's actually telling you. Think about it. Let's go to another verse here. Chapter 88, verse 1. Has there reached you the report or the hadith of the overwhelming event, the Day of Judgment? Hal ataka hadith al-ghashiyah. Has there reached you the story of the Day of Judgment? Now, they would have heard something of this from the Jews and the Christians. The Mushrikeen, they didn't believe in the hereafter. But from the Jews and the Christians, they would have surely heard about this. Now, as Allah is saying, whatever they told you, whatever hadith was circulating at the time, you should go pursue and follow them? Or has the Quran come to clarify and to bring the truth, the al-haq of all this information? Think about it, brothers. Now, have a look at this, brothers. Verses in the Quran that describe the Quran itself has been a hadith. The Quran itself is a hadith, brothers and sisters. Many people don't know this. I myself didn't know this. Now have a look at this verse here, chapter 4, verse 87. Allah, there is no deity except Him. He will surely assemble you for account on the day of resurrection about that which is no doubt. And who is more truthful in Allah in statement? In Arabic it reads, وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ hadith. Allah hadith. Think about that. Who's more truthful in Allah in hadith? Let that sink in for a moment. Of all the hadiths we hear, who's more truthful than Allah? Think about that. Here's another verse to ponder over. Chapter 7, verse 185. Do I not look into the realm of the heavens and the earth and everything that Allah has created and think that perhaps their appointed time has come near? So in what statement, hadith, hereafter will they believe? فَبِأَيِّ حَدِيثٍ بَعْدَهُ يُؤْمِنُونَ. Let that sink in for a moment. Allah clearly is saying here in this verse, which hadith after this Quran will they believe? Have a think about that. He reads the same thing in another verse as well. فَبِأَيِّ حَدِيثٍ بَعْدَهُ يُؤْمِنُونَ. Think about that, brothers. Here's another verse. Chapter 39, verse 23. Allah has sent down the best hadith. Allahu nazzala ahsan al-hadith. Look at that. The best hadith. A consistent book wherein there is reiteration. Kitaban mutashabihan mathaniya. A book that is consistent with itself and repeated. Allah sent down the best hadith. Think about this, brothers. Of all the hadith collections out there, Bukhari, Muslim, and Tirmidhi, Ibn Majah, Allah's saying He's brought down the best one. Think about this. If Allah has brought down the best hadith, could there be a second best? Can there be a third best, a fourth best? Think about this. And the verse before, remember? فَبِأَيِّ حَدِيثٍ بَعْدَهُ يُؤْمِنُونَ. Why are we just letting these verses slide? It's like we're just sweeping these verses under the rug. We're ignoring these verses. What is Allah really saying to us, brothers? Here's another verse for you. Look at this. Look how powerful this is. Chapter 45, verse 6. I'll read it in Arabic because it's so much more powerful. تِلْكَ آيَاتُ اللَّهِ نَتْلُوهَا عَلَيْكَ بِالْحَقِّ فَبِأَيِّ حَدِيثٍ بَعْدَ اللَّهِ وَآيَاتِهِ يُؤْمِنُونَ. These are the verses of Allah, ayatullah, which we recite to you, Muhammad alayhi salam, in truth. Then in which hadith, it's a statement now, hadith, after Allah and His ayat will they believe? Brothers, think again, reflect. Why would Allah use the word hadith here at all? Why would He put the word hadith here? Think about this. Which hadith after Allah and His ayat will they believe? Have a think about that. What's also interesting, if you read the next verse after this, it says something like, and when you recite the verses to them, the verses of Allah to them, it's like there's this deafness in their ears. It's like they don't want to hear what you're saying. See, remember the verse before? فَبِأَيِّ حَدِيثٍ بَعْدَهُ يُؤْمِنُونَ. Which hadith after this Qur'an will they believe? Here it says, which hadith after Allah and His ayat will they believe? Think about this, brothers. Whatever hadith was circulating, even at the time of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, what is Allah saying to them? This is a hadith you have to be following, you have to listen to, you have to obey. This hadith. Not those other hadiths that are circulating. Whatever you heard, the Qur'an has come down to clarify all those hadiths and to bring the truth of the matter. Here's another verse. Chapter 52, verse 34. Then let them produce a hadith like it if they are truthful. فَلْيَأْتُ بِحَدِيثٍ مِثْلِهِ إِنْ كَانُوا صَادِقِينَ. So powerful. It says, let them produce a hadith like it, like this Quran if they are truthful. Think about that, brothers. Let that sink in. Which hadith are we supposed to believe in and follow, brothers? Think about this. Now, just come back to those verses regarding hadith. Yes, there were hadith circulated because Allah attests to this. For example, Allah says, have you heard the hadith of Moses? Have you heard the hadith of the overwhelming event? Have you heard the hadith of the guests of Ibrahim alayhi salam? But is Allah telling us and telling the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam, whatever hadith you heard, go and pursue them, go and follow them? Is that what the Quran is saying? Because the Quran told you which hadith after this will they believe. So which hadith are we supposed to believe and follow, brothers? In fact, I asked that question in that video which I made, hadith of who? Which hadith or ahadith, the plural of hadith, did Prophet Muhammad follow? Think about it, alayhi salam. Which hadith did he follow? Did he follow the hadith of Allah, which Allah says, Allahu nazzala ahsan al-hadith? Did he follow the hadith of Allah and also went around narrating his own hadiths and telling his followers to follow his hadiths equally with the hadith of Allah? Think about that. Would the Prophet Muhammad do such a thing? Or did he strictly adhere to the hadith of Allah? And he called the people to the hadith of Allah. Think about it. Subhanallah. Now, the topic of sunnah. This is another misunderstood topic. Whenever you say sunnah to the Muslims, this is synonymous with the actions and the deeds of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. But the question is, how does the Qur'an make use of this word, brothers? How does it make use of this word? This is so interesting. Have a look at I'll give some examples here. Chapter 3, verse 137. Similar situations as yours, sunnanun. This sunnah means like a way or a mode of practice, an established practice, right? Similar situations have passed on before you. So proceed through the earth and observe how was the end of those who denied. Now here it's talking about the sunnah, the practices of the ancients, of the old people, where their practices were evil. And it says, go through the earth and see what was the end of them. Look what happened to them. Subhanallah, think about that. Here's another verse for you. Chapter 8, verse 38. Say to those who disbelieve that if they cease, what has previously occurred will be forgiven for them. But if they return to hostility, then the proceeding of the former peoples, sunnah, see that word sunnah? Sunnat al-awwaleen, has already taken place. Now, there are many verses like that. I'm only giving you a few examples here, brothers. I urge you to please look at that video of mine, Sunnah of who, and I go into much more in depth there. Now, here it talks about the Sunnah of the ancients, of the old people. And what was their Sunnah? Their Sunnah was rebellion. They disbelieved in Allah and His Messenger, and Allah destroyed them. This is how Allah makes use of the word Sunnah. Here's another verse for you. Chapter 17, verse 77. That is our established way, sunnata, established way, for those we have sent before you of our messengers, and you will not find in our sunnatina, any alteration. In Arabic it reads sunnata man qad arsalna qablaka mir rasulina wa la tajida li sunnatina takhwila. This was our sunnah, as in Allah saying this, our sunnah before you with our messengers, and you will not find any change or alteration in our sunnah. So the way of Allah, the sunnah of Allah with the messengers before was exactly the same with Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. It was no different, because Allah says you won't find any change in the sunnah of Allah. Now, I had a discussion once with some family friends. You know, the topic of sunnah hadith came along. I said to them, have you ever heard of the hadith of Allah? They were puzzled. They were so confused. I go, have you ever heard of the Sunnah of Allah? They're like, huh? They're just scratching their heads. They've never heard of these terms. That's what the Qur'an says, the Hadith of Allah and the Sunnah of Allah. Subhanallah. This is how Allah makes use of these words. Here's another verse, chapter 33, verse 62. This is the established way of Allah, Sunnat Allah, with those who passed on before you. And you will not find in the way of Allah, sunnatillah, any change, similar to the verse just before. Sunnatallahi fil ladhina khalaw min qablu wa lan tajida li sunnatillahi tabdila. This is the sunnah of Allah. The sunnah of who? The sunnah of Allah with those before you. And you will not find any change or any alteration in the sunnah of Allah. When was the last time you went to a lecture or a khutbah or some sort of Islamic gathering and they gave you like a 2-hour lecture on the Sunnah of Allah? You'll never hear it. Never. I'm sure you've never heard this in your life. Or even the Hadith of Allah. Here's another verse. Chapter 35, verse 43. Due to arrogance in the land and plotting of evil, but the evil plot does not encompass except its own people, then do they await except the way of the former peoples. Sunnat al-awwaleen. The sunnah, the practices of the former people. But you will never find in the way of Allah, sunnatillah, any change. And you will not find in the way of Allah, sunnatillahi, any alteration. Now, can you find one verse, just one, I'm only asking for one, brothers and sisters. One verse that clearly states the hadith of Muhammad alayhi salam. The sunnah of Muhammad alayhi salam. Or the sunnah of the Nabi, or the sunnah of the Rasul. You don't find one single verse like this, brothers. Remember, earlier I even showed you the hadith. It says, don't stick around at the Prophet's home for a hadith from him, because he did not like this. Remember, in the other verse says, the Prophet told one of his wives a hadith in secret. Why would hadiths be secret if they're so important? And Allah tells the wives off for sharing his hadith. Think about that, brothers. Think, brothers. The word hadith and the word sunnah, how it is used throughout the Qur'an, and how Muslims have used these terms. It appears they've just plucked these two words out from the Qur'an and they've given them an entirely different definition. Like, I don't remember ever going to an Islamic gathering or lecture and they spoke about the hadith of Allah or the sunnah of Allah. They never talk about this. It's always a hadith and the sunnah of the Prophet. And these are all like these sources outside of the Qur'an, which apparently we're supposed to follow. Brothers, now let me just, before I wrap this up, I just want to make one thing clear. I'm not saying to you, take all the hadiths outside of the Qur'an, throw them into the ocean. I'm not saying that, brothers. Do your own homework, do your own research, brothers. Look at what these hadiths are saying. Believe me, you're going to be shocked, especially among these sahih hadiths. You're going to be shocked with what they say, brothers and sisters. And when you compare them with the Qur'an, brother, believe me, you're going to be confused as hell. You're going to be so confused. The Qur'an says one thing, but the hadith says something else. Which ones are we supposed to believe and follow, brothers? In fact, which ones did Prophet Muhammad ﷺ follow? Whose hadith did he follow? Think about this. When Allah has told you that He sent down the best hadith. Allahu nazzala ahsan al-hadith. He sent down the best hadith. In fact, the Qur'an says, which hadith after this will they believe? There's many other verses as well. There's another verse that say, perhaps you, Muhammad, you want to kill yourself because they will not believe in this hadith. Hadha al-hadith. This hadith, they won't believe in it. The Qur'an itself. Now, I find it really strange that the Prophet Muhammad will follow the hadith of Allah, and he'll also have his own sayings, and he'll go telling people that they need to follow his hadiths as well. Subhanallah. Now, here's the thing, bros. This is what I've concluded about hadiths outside of the Qur'an, okay? I'm not saying go and reject all of them. I'm not saying that, brothers and sisters. Do your own homework. But what I've concluded is this, okay? The hadith literature, to me, are nothing more than biased. Now, underline the word biased. I'm going to get to that shortly. They are biased and have inconsistent snippets of historical information. Let me say that again. They are biased and have within them inconsistent snippets of historical information. Now, when I say bias, what I mean is this. As you well know, Sunni Islam have their own hadith collections, and Shia Islam have their own hadith collection, and they're both different. They're very, very different. Why is that the case? Why? Now, I remember bringing up these questions to some Muslims. I said, well, how do we know the Sunni collections are correct and the Shia ones are wrong? How do we know this? How can we prove this? Oh, it's just, you're either a Sunni or a Shia. You can't be both. This is the rationale, brothers and sisters. And I say inconsistent because you see so many inconsistencies throughout the hadith. I'll give you 3 examples. There's so many I could give off the top of my head. I'm going to give you 3 examples. Now, if you ask a Muslim, an average Muslim, if you ask the question, how long did Prophet Muhammad remain in Mecca? Now, we all know this, 13 years. We know this through history and through historical information, the seerah of the Prophet, through the hadith literature, etc. However, there is a Sahih hadith which says 13 years. However, there's another Sahih hadith which I read myself, saying he remained for 10 years. And there's another Sahih hadith saying that he remained for 15 years. So can they all be correct? One says 13, another says 10, another says 15. Brothers, can't you see the inconsistency here? I'll give you another example. At what age did Prophet Muhammad pass away? We know, 63 years old. That's the age he passed away, historically speaking. Now, there is a hadith that says 63 years. Yes, Sahih hadith. But however, there's another hadith that says 60. And there's another Sahih hadith which says 65. So which is it, brothers? Can they all be correct? Think about this. I'll give you one more example. There's a Sahih hadith that says the Prophet was seen making wudu, washing his body parts once. There's another Sahih hadith where he says he washes his body parts twice. And there's another Sahih hadith saying that he washes body parts 3 times. Well, can they all be correct? You could say that there's these inconsistencies, brother. And hadiths, that's what they are. They're little snippets of historical information. Now, on a positive note, brothers and sisters, on a positive note, what I've concluded, and you can make up your own mind. You don't have to believe what I believe, okay? Do your own homework, do your own research, okay? From these hadiths outside of the Qur'an, in this hadith club, whether it's Sunni or Shia, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, brother, okay? We can extract from them some wisdom, some hikmah, but not hukum. I'll say that again. From these hadiths, we can extract some historical information, perhaps even wisdom, hikmah, but not hukum. Hukum as in Islamic law, Islamic rulings, not from these hadiths. The only one that determines the Islamic law is the Qur'an, brothers and sisters. And I proved that in the video I made in Understand the Qur'an Part 2. Please refer to that video. Now, what I mean by this from some wisdom. Now, there are some hadiths that I personally find really nice. For example, there's a hadith that says, give in charity, even if it's a date, just one simple date, give in charity. So, if the Prophet really did say this, now we don't know. We don't know if he truly said this, brothers, because the hadith literature, it's by definition, it's hearsay, brothers and sisters. So-and-so told so-and-so, who told so-and-so, who told so-and-so, who told so-and-so, that Umar ibn al-Khattab heard that the Messenger of Allah say such and such. We can't prove that the Prophet really said these. But some of these statements have some wisdom in them, brothers. But of course, we can't take this as revelation, brothers. We can't take this hadith literature as wahi from Allah. Allah didn't reveal these hadiths, bro. The only hadith Allah revealed was the Qur'an. Allahu nazzala ahsan al-hadith. The Qur'an is the only hadith that Allah revealed to his Prophet Muhammad alayhi salam. But of course, the Prophet may have spoken some words outside of the Qur'an. Of course, he may have, like, he was a man of wisdom. He may have said some beautiful things, some statements, or some he may have made some statements of wisdom. For example, there's another hadith which says something like, "The best of you are those who are best to their wives." Now, this is a wise statement. But the Prophet's just trying to emphasize that you should be good to your partner, you should be good to your wives, and wives should be good to their husbands. But this doesn't mean it's revelation, brothers and sisters. For example, we could take words from wisdom from Abraham Lincoln, but it doesn't mean it's revelation. We could take words of wisdom from Buddha. It doesn't mean it's revelation. I could go, let's just say I've got some personal problems and I go to a psychologist and he gives me some outstanding words of wisdom and I take up these words and it transforms my life. Does it mean I receive revelation from this person? No. They're simply just words of wisdom. That's all they are. And this hadith literature, we can extract wisdom from them and some useful information, but a lot of it is inconsistent, unfortunately, and scholars, they've been going for hundreds and hundreds of years. They've been trying to clean up this contradiction. It's a never-ending story, subhanAllah. Personally, I tend to stay away from hadiths. The only hadith I follow is the Qur'an, brothers and sisters. Now, you might argue with me. That's up to you. At the end of the day, all of us are going to stand before Allah on our own. I'd rather be safe and say, Ya Rab, I followed your hadith, the ahsan al-hadith, and not any other. Inshallah, I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. Until next time, stay safe. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.